First, I'd like to talk a little bit about our most recent release, which was released at the end of May, which was 11.1. Just want to very, very briefly, for those of you that haven't looked at the release notes or seen what's been made available in the latest release, just some of the great things that we were able to accomplish in that last release. Again, sort of focusing on our customers and focusing on their issues and trying to add some more value to the FirstClass product and make it easier for people to use and get more out of it. So very, very proud, again, of this particular release and our ability to deliver it in a timely manner, on time, which was also very important to me and us as well. That's 2 releases in a row that made it at the door on time, so very, very proud of that. So without further ado, let's get started. So some of the sort of major points for us to hit, as I mentioned previously, was released at the end of May. Some of the components were the core server, internet services, and the client that went out. Main features of the FirstClass server, IPv6 support was introduced for the first time for the server and internet services. Obviously, we can't ignore the fact that the internet is running out of IP addresses, so we now have IPv6 network support within FirstClass. And that also covers, the FirstClass client and the FirstClass log analyzer as well. We also, for the first time ever, released the content scanner module. So for those of you that don't know what the content scanner is, as you're aware today, you can put a SMTP antivirus and content scanner in front of FirstClass to scan messages that go in and out of the FirstClass system. However, there's no way today, or there wasn't a way previously, for you to be able to scan internal messages from user to user within the system. So the content scanner allows that to happen. So effectively what happens is the content scanner module can send messages for users that are members of a particular group that have that feature enabled. And it will send the message off to the content scanner, and it will scan it for whatever it is that you want it to be scanned for, whether it's an antivirus scan, whether it's content, images, that type of thing. And typically what happens is the message will go off to the scanner will give a green light or a red light, and it'll either end the message back to the user or deliver the message because it was fine. One of the more exciting features that we've implemented in the latest release is the ability to populate conferences and communities with the source of an RSS feed. So if you have an important Twitter feed or a newscast or a blog and you'd like to populate a particular conference or community to make that information available to your constituents, that feature is now available in 11.1. We've also implemented new search indexing. We've mentioned it here for communities, and the main reason why we've highlighted this is that for larger customers that were unable to enable index search previously, they were unable to sort of utilize the communities features because search is such an important part of FirstClass community. So we've retooled the index search in 11.1 to allow for larger sites to now actually be able to do a full index search of their FirstClass server, which is very exciting. As well, as you are currently aware, you can connect your FirstClass server to a POP3 server and import POP3 email to a user's FirstClass account. You now have the ability to do that with an IMAP server, and that can be an authenticated one as well. And with IMAP, you have the ability to leave a copy on the IMAP server or delete it once it's been retrieved. On the client side, we have some calendar sharing enhancements. So now whenever a user shares a calendar to another user, the calendar will go into their calendar as before via punch-through, but now the user will actually receive an email notification letting them know that the user has shared their calendar to them. As well, we've now made it easier for you to move the calendar back onto the desktop if that's where you prefer to have that user's calendar if you're managing someone's calendar on their behalf. Similarly, we did the same idea with contact databases. So now if you share a contact database to someone else, it immediately goes inside of their contacts folder so that they can start looking up those names right away. And again, they receive an email notification letting them know that this has occurred. We've also severely beefed up the import-export functionality in the 11.1 client to allow for VCF and iCal and other file formats to now import and export correctly in and out of FirstClass, making it easier for you to import calendar objects and vCards into FirstClass. We've also done sort of the last bit of work for 11, which I think a lot of our users and customers have been asking for, is the ability to have a reply with quote option enabled always. So for those users that would like to always reply with quote, regardless of what reply option they have, now in the preferences there is a checkbox that will allow you to always reply with quote. In the Service Pack 3 release, we released rich text signatures, but in 11.1 now we've allowed you the ability to have multiple signatures. So you can have a formal signature for external people, a less formal signature for internal people, or even multiple signatures for multiple domains that you might be managing from your first-class server. We have now also for the first time given you the ability to populate a mailing list from a user group. How this is accomplished is through a batch admin that can be used to grab all the names of users that are members of a particular group and then populate a mailing list. So this occurs at the time that the batch admin is sent. However, you can then use the events calendar to schedule that to happen once or twice a day so that that list is up to date on a more regular basis. Keyboard shortcut enhancements refers to the ability now to use sort of internet standards for highlighting and editing text inside of a text editor window. So when you're in the body of a message, for example, if you highlight a word, Control-B now will bold the word versus Control-Shift-B. So again, just something that's a little bit easier for users to understand and something that they're used to with other software. As well, now you have the ability to adjust the size and color of fonts within a calendar so that it makes it easier for you to view and or print that particular calendar. As well, for the first time in a very long time, we've updated the dictionary in First Class so that there's a much broader number of words available in the 11 client. That dictionary hadn't been updated in quite some time, so it was a much needed refresh, and I'm glad to say that it's been done. And now for the first time, the 11.1 Windows installers are available as MSI client installers, making it much easier for the administrators on the call to roll out updates to first-class servers via the network instead of having to send a tech to someone's machine and installing it that way. So, in SP3, we added the ability to have enhanced password security on iOS devices, allowing the admin to actually set a timeout which would force the user to re-authenticate after that timeout had occurred as an additional security measure. We have now extended that particular security measure to the BlackBerry and Android clients as well. The first-class log analyzer has received a much-needed refresh and also now supports UTF-8 and IPv6 support along with some other bug fixes as well. And just a small note, so OTSW is now no longer referenced within First Class. It is now First Class Social Communities. Okay, and that's it. So what I'm going to do right now is just ask everyone to press *6 on their phone if they'd like to ask a question, and I'll be more than happy to field any questions that you might have. And I know that Ian has been collecting some questions as well, so I'll try to get those from Ian. While we're waiting for that, I noticed that Jean has asked a question. Will group calendars also get placed inside of a user's personal calendar, receive that notification? It is my understanding that that is the case, but I can find out the answer to that question and I will post it on the website where we shared the information on this particular call. I can post any answers to any questions that you might have. So thank you, Jean, for the question. I understand that it should be the case, but I will double check and let you know. Okay? It doesn't seem like there are any other questions, so if there are further questions, there'll be an opportunity later on for everybody to jump in. So let me very quickly switch gears here a little bit. Okay, now we get on to the exciting stuff. So as some of you know, we've been working on First Class 12 now for quite a while now. We've been investigating how we want to proceed with First Class, both from an architectural standpoint and from a UI standpoint and technology standpoint. So before I do a deep dive on that, let me just talk a little bit about sort of the landscape and what's been happening out there and what we've been hearing from our customers and from the market in general. So what we've been hearing and what we've been seeing is that our customers want a truly integrated offering of social tools. And really what that means is the offering has to be sort of feature-rich, but it also has to have a high level of integration on the back end. And users now are not only collaborating around messages, which has been a strength of First Class for a very, very long time, but they're also now collaborating around documents as well. And as I mentioned before, organizations want a highly integrated offering, meaning they want their solutions to be integrated with other in-house solutions that they have, and this has become a very important part of making a product sticky within an organization. So, and of course, some examples of some of the features that our customers are asking for. Not everybody uses all of them, but they do use them from time to time in different areas. So, the ability to have permissions and presence, have discussions, to be able to rate things and share things, and as well the ability to quickly build a workspace and communicate and collaborate around a particular project or theme, have a calendar around that type of thing. Gartner recently did a study that projected that about 20% of business users will be using social networking services for their primary source of communication. And that's a big number. 20% for enterprise is a very, very big number, and I suspect that that number will actually be quite a bit higher by 2014. And the reason for this is this sort of proliferation of prosumer applications. So what a prosumer application is, or at least my interpretation of it, is, I'm user A at an organization, whether it's a school or a business, and there's a piece of software out on the internet somewhere that is going to make my life a lot easier. And even though the company's not going to pay for it, I'll pay for it because it's going to make my life easier. So, there's a number of applications out there. There's, Yammer and Box and a number of other apps out there that do a number of different things depending on my needs. The problem, or the nightmare from the IT manager's perspective, is that once that user gets that application and starts putting their personal data there, it's immediately left their private network, which means it's gone out of their control. They don't know if it's been encrypted, being it sent up or not. They don't know where it's being stored. They don't know what password strength they're using. There's a number of things there that can cause a great deal of concern for an IT administrator or even a regular admin who's got to protect either the company's data or protect students and users and other constituents from data loss as well. So this is becoming a big problem for a lot of our customers. So in taking all these things into account, and then we sort of look back at our product and our history and sort of broke it down to the core sort of pillars of what our strengths really are. What are the things that make First Class really, truly great? And one of the main ones is the fact that we've been cloud-based from the very beginning. Cloud is a buzzword, but it's sort of gone beyond that now. Cloud really is the way that things are going. It's not a hot thing. It's not a fad anymore. Everybody likes things that are cloud-based. Now, a cloud could be an on-premise cloud. It could be a private or public cloud. Cloud could be interpreted in many different ways. If I asked 3 people what their definition of cloud is, I would probably get 3 very different answers. But at the basis explanation of that term is that your data is not stored locally on your machine. Your data is stored on a server somewhere. And typically, cloud also means that you're accessing that data from a web browser, not any other type of software. One of the other strengths of First Class is, and this has always been true, is that it very easily allows teams and individuals that are geographically spread out to quickly collaborate and communicate around various different topics or in different ways, whether it's a conference, an email, whatever the case may be. As well, our collaborative tools, our conferences, and our communities are highly permissionable and highly configurable, allowing you a lot of ease and control when it comes to creating and sharing the data and allowing people into the system. As well, we have a very, very rich history in the messaging and groupware space. Obviously, we've been around now for about 21 years, and obviously a lot of strength in web publishing. So where do we go from there? Well, we recognize that some of the keys to success for our next release, we said, okay, what do we need to have in order for the next release to really be great and for users to really like it and have it be engaging? And the very first one that came to mind was that it has to be a web user experience, and I highlight the word web, and it needs to be a great user experience. It has to be engaging. Users have to be drawn to it, much like the First Class Communities interface when it was first released. People absolutely loved the interface, and they found that it was very easy to use. Adoption was quite high, actually, because it was a paradigm, a Web 2.0 web paradigm that people were very, very comfortable with. Administrators liked it because The learning curve, which is typically a big barrier to rolling out any new technology, wasn't steep at all, so it was very, very easy and a lot less of a headache for administrators to roll out the product. Secondly, it needs to have a great mobile experience. And my definition of a great mobile experience is if I've left the office or if I'm out and about and I need to get at data, whether it's a contact, a calendar item, a message, whatever the case may be, while I'm out, I should be able to have, in almost full fidelity, access to that data no matter where I am, regardless of what device I have, whether it's an iPhone, an Android device, a BlackBerry, a tablet, or any new device that could be coming out in the future. So that is obviously a very important one, and I think that 1 and 2 are evenly important when discussing sort of the future of First Class and where we need to go. The third option is that the product really needs to be modular. We need to make it so that we can collaborate and integrate into other third-party systems, whether it's other groupware or an SIS or something that lives in the cloud like a Salesforce.com integration or whatever the case may be. Allowing for collaboration as a bolt-on for users that aren't using First Class as a primary collaborative tool today, or offering up various flavors of collaboration for different constituents that don't necessarily need the same level as a full user. And of course, number 4, although we've always sort of had this, so this is a bit of a slam dunk here, is needs to be enterprise class software. Scalability and reliability are always and have always been extremely important to us, and we will continue to provide that going forward with First Class. So the major push for 12, one of the major pushes is this idea of the 2 universes of First Class and social workplace or First Class communities. A lot of people that have and use the First Class collaborative suite today, they find it difficult to either understand or roll out First Class communities because, well, they've already got First Class and they've got conferencing, which is extremely powerful, and it can be highly configurable and permissionable. And why would I want to do this? But then at the same time, they look at some of the features that the First Class communities has to offer, which is the search and the way that the search results are presented, the ability to have blogs and wikis and shared documents that have versioning around documents and tagging that are seriously lacking on the First Class side as well. So wouldn't it be great if you could take the best of the 2 universes and then remove the confusion between them being the same system, even though you access them differently, one via the client and one via the web, and have sort of a single unified UI to both. So this is where we're going next. First Class 12, first and foremost, will be delivered using HTML5 and will be providing a Web 2.0 interface. And really what that means is a number of different things. So Web 2.0 interface means ease of use. We want to make it so that when users sit down in front of their browser and they log in for the first time, we want it to be engaging. We want them to really like it and want to jump in and dive in and start playing with it and uncovering the opportunities that are there for them to make their lives and make their work a little bit easier. And as well, we want to leverage HTML5 to deliver this. So HTML5 allows us the ability for the first time from a technology standpoint to really take some of the power of First Class and translate that to a web browser, which is something that we could never do before. Web technologies just weren't there previously in order for us to do a lot of the things that we can do in a First Class client. So the stars have sort of aligned, as it were, for us to be able to provide that. One of the other major things is we're going to be moving to Apache or non-internet services for publishing this new template set. And this actually buys us quite a bit. First of all, with Apache, it's an industry standard web server. There isn't a single IT administrator that would bat an eyelash if you asked them to install and implement an Apache instance, whether it's on an existing internet services box or on a new machine. As well, once you do that, the Apache web server does one job, and it does it extremely well, and that is its ability to publish web pages. Internet services is great for publishing web pages, but it also does a number of other jobs. And it's very, very difficult to compete with somebody who does one thing extremely well. So keeping in sort of the idea that we want to play well with others, as it were, which is sort of the unofficial tagline for First Class 12, We want to leverage existing internet technologies when delivering our new product. So HTML5 is the beginning of that. Pushing it out onto Apache servers means that you'll be able to leverage a lot of the power of Apache application services and things of that nature. You can also do load balancing across multiple instances of Apache to help with concurrency and things like that, which is also a great segue into the next and also just as important release of 12, which will be a API. So for the first time ever, we will have a fully documented API that will allow you to push and pull data in and out of FirstClass. So there will effectively be two versions of the API. The first one will be a UI API that will allow you to take any web data from any source, whether it's an internal web page or an external web page or an external cloud offering, whatever the case may be, and display that web page data inside of the dashboard or the main login page of the new web interface. As well, we'll have the ability to leverage something called a RESTful API, which allows you to pull FirstClass data out of FirstClass and push it out to another database, website, whatever the case may be. And for the first time, we're going to have a true API that allows FirstClass to fully integrate on the back end with other back-end systems that you might have today. So the FirstClass would become sort of that one-stop shop where people typically, when they come into work and they grab their coffee, they sit down and the first place that they go is to their email, and then they're all their other places. Well, wouldn't it be great if they could also see the things that are important to them on that dashboard, not just their mailbox and their contacts and their calendars, but also any conferences or communities that they read on a regular basis, and maybe they want to have a look at their SIS system, they want to look at stocks, they want to look at anything that really is important to them at that time. So the next big piece, as I mentioned previously, about the modularization of the product. So really what we're talking about here is breaking it down into three core components. The first one is a dashboard component, or sort of a collaboration light. And that is what I was alluding to earlier, is that there are going to be constituents that don't need the full suite of FirstClass and what it has to offer. All they're going to want is effectively that sort of dashboard view where they log in and they've got a conference or community or two, and maybe some other information that's being populated there. And that's going to be good enough for them, and that's all they really need. And that's effectively what the dashboard is for them. And then the next layer is the collaborate layer, which is the full suite of collaboration. So full conferencing, full communities, the ability to integrate on the back end with other systems and communicate with other people, the ability to invite constituents from outside the system in if their permissions are allowed to do so, and really taking full advantage of all the collaborative tools of FirstClass around document editing and sharing and wikis and just messaging in general. And of course, the third layer is everything else. It's the communicate layer. So it's your mailbox, your contacts, your calendars, and all those other sort of PIM objects that you have today. So this is a major push for us, because if you start thinking about it a little bit, if the gears start turning a little bit, there's going to be users that you have today that you'd like to bring into the FirstClass system, but were unable to because either it was a bit daunting to give them the full FirstClass suite, or you just didn't want to pay full licenses for those users. So the pricing and everything else will be made available sort of when we're closer to the release of FirstClass 12, but this is a major push for us going forward. Another major release point that we're going to be hitting is the ability to have document editing. So I want to do this one a little bit backwards. So as you know, in FirstClass communities today, we do have support for WebDAV, and the WebDAV support right now is a little bit light. We don't currently support the latest versions of Microsoft, and we don't natively support OS 10. So as of 10.7 and higher, there actually is native WebDAV support built into the Mac OS. So for FirstClass 12, we're going to have full WebDAV support for Microsoft Office on Windows, as well as WebDAV support for mounting volumes on both Windows and Mac, and I believe Microsoft Office for the Mac as well will also support this. And you'll have the ability to upload, download files, make edits to files within communities, and have the versions be saved. And all the existing functionality that you have today in FirstClass communities will be pushed forward into FirstClass 12. And then the second point that we're trying to hit here is the ability to have live native document editing. So the ability for two users or more to be able to open a document, come together around the document, and collaborate on the building of that document. And because we're going to be doing this over the web using HTML, You'll have a rich text, full HTML editor now when you're editing anything within FirstClass. So creation and reading of documents and messages will be in full HTML, not this sort of hybrid world that we have today of FirstClass content versus HTML content. Everything will be done in HTML. Just to continue here, so the integration of the communities and conferences. So going forward, there will be no separate UI over the web. Conferences and communities will coexist within the same interface. Users will have the ability to create a conference or a community based on a picker that will have a little brief guide text that will explain the benefits and the differences between the two. And we're going to make it easier for you to share documents and other FirstClass objects within FirstClass 12. So if you're inside of a calendar item or you're inside of a document or a message, you'll have the ability to just hit a share button and share that with someone. For example, a calendar item is a good example. Let's say there's a calendar event that I'd like to share with someone, but I don't necessarily want to invite them to the event, so I just want to send them a copy of or share a copy of that calendar item with them. As well, we'll be implementing CalDAV integration with FirstClass 12, so the ability to synchronize multiple calendars in and out using the CalDAV tool. So if you've got your personal calendar on Gmail, for example, you've got your work calendar on FirstClass, and my wife uses some other calendaring tool, I can use CalDAV to integrate all those calendars together within FirstClass, and also push FirstClass calendar data out using CalDAV to other devices as well. This is primarily for the heavy mobile users, of which I am one of. It would be very nice if I had everything in a single calendar and not have to synchronize only one on my device, and CalDAV will allow that to happen. Another major feature that will be a benefit of the HTML5 interface is the ability to do spell checking on the fly, which is something that we didn't have before. Leveraging web browsers and the rich text and HTML editors that we'll be using for creating new content will allow you to have spell checking on the fly. RAD apps and custom forms. So RAD apps will work using the new web interface, and so will custom forms. So now there is a bit of a caveat there. So the first one with RAD applications is, excuse me, with RAD applications using the FirstClass client versus the web, typically the FirstClass client, because of its nature, has the ability to automatically do things in the background without user intervention. However, a web page or a web interface typically requires a user to click a button or perform some action in order for you to get some sort of data being presented to them or have an action occur. So some RAD applications may have to be slightly retooled, or the forms will have to be retooled as well to allow for that RAD app to work over the web, but it should just translate automatically over the web. And the same is true of custom forms. If you have a custom form today, we'll take that custom form and then we'll expose it using Python out through Apache and then display it as HTML. Now, I can't guarantee that it'll be the prettiest form you've ever seen, so we will also be providing you the ability with a special utility that will export any FirstClass form into HTML format so that you can then edit and make the form beautiful and then load it into the template section on Apache. As well, we're going to have a new device-agnostic mobile UI, and what I mean by this is because we're going to be leveraging HTML5 for the UI, every mobile device today or every smartphone and tablet today supports HTML5 natively, which is great for us because we can more quickly develop and roll out mobile clients for all existing platforms. And as well, any new platforms that are going to be made available tomorrow will be much quicker to the gate, as it were, with an HTML5 client because we'll be able to quickly roll out a client that will be supported on that tablet, regardless of what operating system it's running. As well, we'll be implementing OAuth authentication on the back end. So for those of you that aren't familiar with OAuth, OAuth is sort of the industry standard for authenticating across multiple cloud systems. So when a user logs into FirstClass and they're presented with their dashboard, if there is some data that you'd like to present in the dashboard that actually resides on either a cloud solution or another solution somewhere else, you don't want that user to have to re-authenticate within all those little bubbles. So OAuth will allow you to accomplish that. It'll be able to go out and authenticate as that user on that remote system and then display the data without them having to log in more than once. So just some examples of some sort of widgets that I was discussing. You could build a stock ticker, Salesforce.com integration, some social networking, a Twitter feed or Facebook feed, access to an SIS or basic SIS, some web forms like employee self-serve and identity management, that type of thing. There's a very, very exciting part of FirstClass because for the first time you are going to have the ability to fully integrate FirstClass with a lot of other systems that you have today. And it's very, very exciting for me. And what's very important to note is that the API is being worked on right now, and we're going to be releasing the API approximately 90 days before the release of FirstClass 12, which will give our development forums and groups and also our partners the time to ramp up a number of different integrations that will be made available through that community. So I'm very, very excited about sort of building up that community of FirstClass engineers and developers. So you're probably wondering when this is going to be happening. Well, work for this has already begun. We started working on FirstClass 12 back in October, and we're getting very, very close to releasing it at the end of this year. So we're shooting for a December 2012 release of FirstClass 12. So just to recap some of the things to expect, the new Web 2.0 HTML-based web UI to replace the existing desktop client. So let me just talk about that a little bit while I'm bringing up this point is, if you were to upgrade to FirstClass 12 today, everything would work the same as it has in the past, meaning the FirstClass clients will continue to connect and will continue to work. All that information will still be there. The internet services and the web templates and SMTP and everything else will still be there, and you'll still need to run internet services because it does so much more than web. So your web templates will continue to work. The new web interface is going to be delivered like a new set of web templates via Apache. We recognize that, customers need an upgrade path. So there will be a full upgrade path to FirstClass 12 for FirstClass Communities users or FirstClass users or for a combination or sort of hybrid existing sites as well. And the FirstClass clients, as I mentioned before, will continue to work going forward, but this new web UI is going to be the primary focus of our engineering group going forward, trying to deliver as many features and really boosting up the performance of the web interface and the experience there. We'll be reunifying the product, so the OTSW and FirstClass, those two universes will now become one, lessening the confusion between the two, but more importantly, leveraging the power of the two and putting them into the same place. The ability to have tagging and blogging and wikis and profiles and all those other great, powerful social aspects to a collaborative tool that really enhance the collaboration without focusing too much on the social. The API will offer increased integration and interaction capabilities. I mean, really the sky's the limit as far as integrations going forward. Somebody who has a lot of RAD applications or maybe wanted to build a RAD application but either couldn't afford to hire somebody or couldn't afford to train somebody to learn RAD can now use HTML5 and Apache and build applications in Apache that can connect to external databases and put that data in and out of FirstClass or display it within FirstClass. And the best part of that is those are technologies that you don't mind training somebody on because they're transferable to other aspects of their job versus FirstClass RAD, which is sort of narrow and sort of closed, right? FirstClass has always been very, very closed, siloed product. And what we're trying to do is sort of tear down those walls with FirstClass 12 and make it easier for people to get data in and out of FirstClass and really make it the cornerstone of their collaborative and groupware products. We'll be de-emphasizing monolithic releases. And what I mean by this is, there's a lot of work that goes into building releases, installers, release notes, and making sure that a major upgrade won't break anything going forward. Typically, the software is ready 60 days before it's released because of all those massive components that have to be built. So the idea with the new release is, with web templates and leveraging Apache, we can now do razor-focused updates, bug fixes, and releases that don't require you to completely wipe out all your templates and then reinstall them from scratch. You'll have the ability to just apply updates to certain templates that need to be applied or changed. FirstClass is a managed service and cloud service. This is something that we've offered for quite some time, but we'll be bringing this more into focus when FirstClass 12 gets released, more coming on that in the coming months. And as well, the modularization of the product, the idea of breaking it down into sort of 3 levels: the dashboard, collaborate, and communicate bits. Okay, so now we're at the questions portion. Okay, so actually I'm just reading a number of questions here, so bear with me for 1 sec. One of the questions here was, okay, Android, BlackBerry are still way behind Apple Mobile. Will they catch up? So the answer to that is absolutely yes. The UI for mobile will be standardized across all mobile devices. There will no longer be, this huge disparity of features between the iOS and Android and BlackBerry or any other device for that matter. The only differences will be in the size of the screen. So if you've got a larger screen like an iPad or a tablet, then obviously we'll be able to do more with that because we've got more real estate to play with. But the new UI will be uniform across, as much as possible, uniform across all 3 platforms. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, a lot of people are asking for screenshots and sneak peeks of the UI. We're not quite ready to show that yet, but let me just talk a little bit about what we've done there. So I took sort of 3 different tacks with plans for the new user interface. The first tack that we did is we went to our existing engineering team who have been building and developing FirstClass for quite some time, and also leveraging some other OpenText employees that were kind enough to offer us their services, and asked them to come up with a UI design for FirstClass 12's web UI. At the same time, I also went to a third-party company, somebody who knows nothing about FirstClass, because I wanted to get a clean perspective without the waters being muddied, having them be FirstClass users for the last 20 years, and asked them to come back with their own UI design for both mobile and web. And we've also gone to a pixel painter or just a straight designer, somebody that cares more about how it looks versus how it works. And what we're doing now is we're trying to take those 3 designs and incorporate them together, taking the best bits from all 3 to come up with a unified UI. So my hope is that within the next 30 to 45 days, we'll have our next call, and I'll be able to maybe do a little sneak peek of what that UI is going to look like. Okay, and as I mentioned before, just to underline that fact, if someone has asked the question here, yes, the API will be released 90 days before the release, giving our partners and our customers a greater opportunity to develop integrations and plugins for the FirstClass UI. Will development continue for all 3 operating systems, Windows, Mac, and Linux? Good question. So on the server side, absolutely, Windows, Mac, and Linux, we will continue to support those. But the web interface will obviously be browser-specific, not OS-specific, and that will be our focus going forward. But if it doesn't work on a particular browser on a particular OS, then that would be a bug, and then that would be something that we would address. Someone's asked a question about pricing. I don't have the answer yet for pricing, but we will make that available as soon as we can. It'll probably be made available around the September timeframe, so about 3 months before release is what we're shooting for. Okay, someone else is asking the question. They are a business and they want to use FirstClass as a content management system utilizing versioning, subcontainers, search indexing, and subscription features, and they would need hundreds or thousands of subcontainers to do this. Will this be possible? Absolutely. Because we're going through a new web UI, you're actually going to now have the ability to have subcontainers inside of a community. You'll have the ability to put a calendar inside of a community. You have the ability to use WebDAV for versioning and uploading and downloading documents on both Windows and Mac. You'll have the ability to do tagging and wikis and blogs and all those, sort of the best of the 2 worlds. Another quick question here about document integration. How does this work with OpenOffice versus Microsoft Office? I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% familiar with the WebDAV implementation of OpenOffice, so I'd have to defer back to our engineers to get an answer on that. Now, there's really 2 ways to leverage WebDAV, though. The first one is through the UI by clicking on the document. It'll open up the default document editor, and it'll make an open connection using WebDAV, which would be secured as well. And then open the document, you can edit it, and it'll automatically save it up as a new version with you as the author, and then you can go in and tag it. But there is also the opportunity for you to mount a network share that is a WebDAV source and upload and download and edit documents from there as well. And that can be done with any document editing software that supports those file formats. A couple questions here. Will pricing cost be neutral? Well, it will be to a certain degree. I mean, obviously, we don't want to undercut our existing customers and affect their pricing too much, but at the same time, we want to make it easier for users to bring on constituents that they normally wouldn't have been able to bring on in the past. So more to come on that, definitely. Will the client be continued until FC12 UI has all features in it? So the first-class client, and let me underline this right now, we are going to still need to support the first-class client. At the very least, you need it to continue to administer the server. And we also recognize that users are not going to be able to migrate their entire customer base to a web UI overnight. That's going to take some time. So we are going to have to continue to build and provide first-class clients along the way. But the primary emphasis of development will be on the new web UI, trying to make that the best experience possible and getting all the features in there that we think are important for our users, so that we just feel that eventually, naturally, organically, everybody will move to that new interface.
John, this is Sam from Windsor, Essex.
Hey, Sam.
Hi, just a quick question. Our schools use personal web publishing a lot for their school web pages. What are you guys doing for personal web publishing with the Apache side, all that stuff?
Okay, so for the personal web publishing, I think for FirstClass 12, that's going to continue to be pushed out using internet services. And we're going to have to touch on the web publishing in 12.1. We've already promised a huge amount in FirstClass 12 in a very, very short time frame. I mean, typically, a development effort of this magnitude typically takes 18 months to 24 months to deliver, and my guys have been tasked with doing this in about 9 to 10 months. So we're sort of all hands on deck and all guns a-blazing for 12. And some things are going to not make it into that first release of FirstClass 12. But web publishing, I recognize, is being used by a number of people. As well, there are bolt-on products that we actually sell, like RWD, that utilize that as well. So what we're doing with the RWD folks is we're going to be letting them into the API program very, very early days, so that they can start porting their tool over to the new Apache interface as well. And the Apache web interface is going to be supremely faster than what we have today. In sort of basic load testing that was done just at a developer's desk, we used to do load testing with first-class communities, which is the heaviest load on internet services, and we would get no more than 250 to 300 concurrent users on a single cluster. And by about 250 to 300 users, you found that the user interface was pretty slow. It was not an acceptable experience for users. But with just basic testing on a developer's machine, not even a proper server, we were easily able to get that number up to 800. And with load balancing across 2 Apache servers, I think we're hitting 1600 to 2,000 concurrent users. And that's without any real tweaking of Apache or the web templates. So I'm very, very excited about the opportunities that the new web interface provides, not just from our ability to deliver a fast, rich user experience, but also our ability to deliver, really, really fast websites. Sorry, I got to start reading through here. Will there be any new way except the FCAS to communicate with a backend database? Yes, great question. Thank you. So using the new API and leveraging Apache applications as well, if you'd like to, you can easily integrate a backend API, a backend database like MySQL, SQL Server, whatever the case may be, and then plug that in and out of a first-class conference community, display it within the UI, build a new web form and display that with first class. I mean, really, sort of the sky is the limit. It's only bounded by your imagination there. So, will there be capability to build in to provide some features like RWD? Absolutely. So we've been speaking with the RWD folks, and as I mentioned before, the API is going to be released about 90 days before release. We're going to bring those guys in and some of our other development partners as well as early as we possibly can so that they can start developing their products for the new Apache services. We think that there's some really exciting opportunities for them and their products and what they'll be able to do given the new architecture and infrastructure of FirstClass. And I think that applications like RWD are uniquely positioned to really offer a lot of value, and it'll just be the first of many such applications and ports and plugins that will really add more value to the FirstClass product. Okay, sorry, there's actually quite a few questions here, so let me see if I can zip through them. This is scrolling by pretty quickly. Thank you all for your questions, by the way. Let's see here. Security. Here's a very good question. How will security compare with this new HTML5 client as opposed to the present dedicated client? Present client uses CAPS 128. Isn't this superior to SSL? So, good question. As I mentioned previously, the new web interface will be delivered using Apache. It will obviously be securable using Apache services, so you'll be able to leverage SSL certificates on the Apache server for the connections from the client to the Apache server. And as well, on the back end, the Python translator that speaks to the FirstClass server uses FCP protocol, which is the standard FirstClass protocol for encryption on the back end as well. Now, on the back end, that's not usually too much of a big deal because they're typically stored in the same DMZ or the same VLAN or private subnet. So you can secure that if you'd like to, but most people don't because it's inside of a secure portion of the network, and security or adding security to that layer typically slows down the connection. But we're not terribly concerned about Apache. The nice thing about Apache is, yes, it's very, very well known and people find security holes, but at the same time, there's a huge community of people out there that devote themselves to finding and then plugging those holes, making the product better. And it's another reason why we like to leverage sort of these third-party tools. I mean, us doing everything ourselves all the time means that it's difficult for people to develop and integrate with FirstClass, and leveraging these third-party tools frees up our time to focus on things that are more important, and then we leverage the power of, you know, 1 million people strong Apache community. Here's a question from Derek Woodward. Will FirstClass eventually incorporate a web video conference system for one-to-one or one-to-many between FC users? I would like to add that to a future roadmap at some point. There are no plans for this for FirstClass 12 as of right now. However, that's not to say that you couldn't plug in an existing one-to-one or one-to-many video application that you have today using the web API. I mean, you could just pop up a little window that has an existing tool that you're building in there. But we would at some point like to incorporate video and audio chatting that would be a little bit more in line with what users are doing today. And as I mentioned previously, once we move to this new architecture, we can start leveraging a lot of great technology out there that we weren't able to before. So if there's some general public license web and video chat conferencing utilities that we could potentially incorporate in the product or make it easier for people to plug in, we'll definitely be open to opportunities like that. And I think that's sort of the next natural progression of the product, and also makes collaboration that much more powerful when you're able to have at least audio and preferably video collaboration around documents and messages. So it's something that I would very much like to see in the product in the coming releases. Okay, I think that's it for questions. Let me just continue with our prez a little bit. So here are some questions that you might have thought to ask but didn't. I think we may have touched on some of these, so bear with me. Will the client still work? Absolutely, without a doubt, the client will continue to work. As I mentioned previously, upgrading to FirstClass 12, if you did it today, your users would see no difference whatsoever. Will I still need Internet services? Absolutely. Internet services does so much more than web. It still does SMTP and IMAP and POP3 and handles all of the Internet protocols and translates them to the FirstClass server. So it's still a very important part of FirstClass. RAD applications, how will they work? I think I touched on this previously. RAD apps will just work over the web, although you may have to retool them slightly to work with web forms versus client forms. Custom forms, they will be automatically rendered on the web, although you can save them to HTML and put a little bit of lipstick on them and make them that much nicer. Architecture requirements. I see that 2 different people have asked this question. So the architecture requirement here is going to be an Apache server. And really what that means is an instance or instances of Apache. So that's really going to depend on your hardware and the number of concurrent users that you have. If, for example, you have a pretty beefy Internet Services box, you have the ability with Internet Services and with Apache to bind them to a particular IP or a particular port on an IP or even a particular network card. And what that means is that you can run Apache simultaneously on your Internet Services box. They would each have their own IP address. And then that way you wouldn't have to get new hardware. And as well, you could run multiple instances as well, depending on your load. But there are going to be customers that, for concurrency's sake, if they're up around 1,000 or 2,000 users or more, they're probably going to want a dedicated hardware box for their Apache servers. Okay, that's it. That's the future. So, as I promised previously, one of the things that we've been accused of doing in the past is not communicating very well with our customers, and it's been a while since we did the last one of these, but now that we're on our path for FirstClass 12, I'll be doing one of these calls every month, be sending out an invite via the newsletter. So I hope that everybody enjoyed this, and I hope you got a lot out of it. If you have any other questions, I'll leave the WebEx going for a little bit longer, and we can take those questions and post them on the website. And we'll be sending out a notice in a couple of weeks letting you know when we'll be having our next call to show off a little bit more of what's been happening and what's going to be coming for FirstClass 12. So. No one else has any other questions? I will say thank you to everyone for attending, and have a great day.